Hi, good morning and good day to everybody. We're here today to present and discuss some important points of the Canto 29 of Paradise of the Divine Comedy. I am Susanna Barsella, and I teach at Fordham in the Department of Modern Languages and Literatures, and also in the Center for Medieval Studies and Comparative Literatures. I teach Italian and medieval Italian, and together with our colleagues, I'm one of the organizers of the Fordham Reads Dante, so I'm very happy to participate in this project that Alison has organized. And I'm pleased to leave the word to my colleague, Giorgio Pini, so that he can present himself.
Yes, my name is Giorgio Pini, and I also teach at Fordham University, but I'm in the philosophy department, and my specialty is later medieval philosophy.
Thank you, Giorgio. So I think we can move on. Maybe just a very, very brief reminder of where we are and what's happening at this point of the Divine Comedy. For those who haven't maybe followed step by step Dante's way through the heavens. We are in the primum mobile still, which is the last of the so-called physical spheres before the Empyrean, so just below the Empyrean, before they enter the Empyrean together with Beatrice. And it is from the primum mobile that Dante has a vision of the angelic choirs that are circling around a luminous point, which is at the center of the Empyrean. In the previous canto, in the Canto 28, which is a sort of first part treatise on angels in the Commedia, Beatrice had explained to Dante his vision of this circle, the reasons and how they do, what they do, and etc. In this canto, in the Canto 29, instead, she continues her treatment on angels, her sort of philosophical treatment for the way that she proceeds. And here in particular, she is concerned about the doctrine on angels, and in particular on the nature of angels, on the creation of angels, as we can see it within the general doctrine of creation by God. So she starts addressing these issues. These are fundamental issues, so important also to understand how Dante conceives and organizes his text around fundamental principles and criteria for the functioning of the cosmological and theological system. So I think that we can get into some of these major issues together with Giorgio. My first lot of questions or things to discuss with him. And the first is what he thinks that, in particular on the theme of creation, whether there is something that is relevant and specific, original to Dante, in the way he is presenting the first point that Beatrice is touching upon, the creation simul, ex nihilo, and maybe something else. Particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree that this is like a central point, and it's extremely interesting. I'm looking in particular, at lines 13 to 18, where Dante just talks about the reason why God created the universe, okay? And here I see something quite traditional and also something quite original, okay? The traditional element is that Dante insists that God created the universe not to increase his own goodness. Clearly, God is supreme perfection, so it doesn't need anything. This is pretty traditional, but there is a very interesting point, I think, where he says, well, what is the reason why God created the universe? So that, other things that actually come out from God, the suo splendore, they could say themselves, subsisto, I exist. So this I find as a kind of interesting element because it really seems to stress that the reason why God wanted to create the universe was to allow other beings to say, I exist, okay? To give them some kind of subjectivity, some kind of a conscious participation in the universe. And this element, I think, is important, definitely here in this part of the comedy, but it is also quite original. Yeah. What do you think, Susanna, about that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is exactly, on Subsisto, we have spent a lot of time and a lot of ink. I absolutely agree. And it seems to me that this is coherent with one of the major traits that characteristics of the commedia, which is the centrality of the subject, and in particular in the subject within the voyage towards salvation. We needed to have some sort of collaboration, of cooperation, and I think we will find again here. We have seen the buon fare, il ben fare, the buona voglia. There is a lot of stress that I think Dante has on the necessity of our collaboration, cooperation, in order to achieve salvation in the voyage to salvation. And I was wondering then whether, so just from here we can see that how this is an element. So the consciousness of who we are is also consciousness of what we are for. And I wonder whether this is a necessary element for the conception of salvation. For example, for the scholastic philosophers in general.
Yeah, I think that was like a very controversial topic, of course. But here it seems to be pretty clear that Dante, through Beatrice, is adamant that the roles of the angels, the ones who are good, the ones who don't fall, is not just passive. Okay, they do not just receive grace. If you look like lines 64 to 66, okay, the idea is that actually Beatrice really makes a point of the fact that it is something meritorious. It is the good angels on merit. It's something that they do. They open themselves to receiving this grace. So it is not just that the good angels are passive recipients of God's grace. They are called to participate in a conscious way in this kind of big plan that, of course, has been put together by God, but cannot really work if all the elements just do each one their own work. So it seems that, this element of grace is central, but it is not seen as a passive reception, but as a saying yes to the role that we are called to play.
So my next question then goes to the creation itself, right? Because in the presentation that Dante does of what happens, God creates the world and presumably creates it perfect or sort of. But then immediately after, and there is a lag between the creation and Lucifer's fall. It is a logical, probably lapse of time, not a temporal one, but still there is a difference between the very moment in which everything has been created, the angels are created actually, and the moment in which Lucifer falls. There is this battle, he loses, and the faithful angels do receive these additional illuminating graces that lock them in their, whatever they do and whatever they are now for the rest of their eternal or immortal life. Let's say, because they have been created, they are not eternal; they are immortal. So, what do you think about that? What do you think is Dante doing here in giving us this turbamento of the alimenti? So the geography of the world that we know changes dramatically because of Lucifer's fall.
Yeah.
What is this mora? Why do we need a mora at all?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm looking. I think you are referring like to lines like 49 and
Yes.
50 and 51. Basically, the idea that okay, there is an interval. It's very very short, but there is an interval. So I mean, I think that your question is absolutely crucial. Why didn't God create the angels already in a state of supreme perfection? If he had done so, nobody would have fallen. Okay, everything would have been perfect from the very beginning. That's a very important question, and that is a question that is very much debated by philosophers, theologians, and I think that there were like quite different. There were some worries that you said, well, if God had created, of course, the fall is a fact for these people. Okay, so you have to explain the possibility of the fall, and you have to say, well, if God had created everything perfect from the very beginning, that could not have been any fall. But then, of course, you have your question. And I think that the kind of standard answer is what we find in Anselm, okay, Anselm of Canterbury, who, and then different versions of it are really present in most major scholastics, theologians, including Thomas Aquinas. And it is that, well, if God had created already everything in a state of supreme perfection, and specifically angels, remember that angels are intelligent creatures, okay? And they have this kind of affetto, as Dante says, this specifically this kind of volitional element. Something would have been missing in some way. They would not have been given the opportunity to exercise in an autonomous way that adhesion, that conscious participation, again, as we were saying earlier, okay, to God's plan. They would have been like some kind of automata, okay, some little puppets in some way. But the idea is that no, that was not God's plan. God wanted to give them the opportunity to actually actively participate, okay? And how could God do that? Well, only by creating them in a state which was very, very good, but not the best that they could get. And then in order to get to the best where they could get, they had to say, okay, I'm getting there almost, by giving my own contribution. And this takes us to the reason why some angels actually said no, okay? So why Lucifer and his companions fell, like lines 55 to 60, I think. And Dante doesn't say very much about the Lucifer, okay? It says superbia, okay, so it's clear, and that is a very standard solution. The reason was pride, okay, that was the standard answer. But it doesn't say a lot, okay, about Lucifer. But I think it's already very interesting why it doesn't say a lot. And I think that we can actually figure out more about the reason of this fall if we look, okay, at the good angels and the reasons why they didn't fall. Okay, so if you go like to line 58 to 60, says, oh, they were modest. Okay, they were not generically modest, not that they were just humble. Okay, what did their modesty consist in? They acknowledged that they depended on God, and they were created by God, who had actually given them the intelligence to acknowledge that fact.
Yeah. Not to have intelligence in general, or to have a great intelligence. Sometimes we find that in translations, and that's not correct. It's the intention to understand that, which brings us to the point that the very first step in this discourse is the subsisto, right? So everybody's created so that they can say, I have a consciousness of themselves. But then immediately after, there must be something else, that is humility in not only say I, but in acknowledging that someone else has created them, and has created them so that they can understand it. No, if I
exactly.
understand.
Exactly.
So you're pointing to the fact that these superb is an intellectual fault in Lucifer's because he remains stuck in the subsisto moment and never gets to the second moment of.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good way of putting it. I think that it is interesting that, as I was mentioning, Dante doesn't say so much about why Lucifer said it. He just said, okay, it was pride. But it says much more about why the good angels did not fall. So that again takes us, I think, to the point that it's not something that Lucifer did. Okay, Lucifer was also given the intelligence to understand that he had been created by God and that he was dependent on God. So it's not the case that Lucifer said, I was not created by God. That would have been, very stupid, frankly, on Lucifer's part. It is something, so it is not that Lucifer did or said something. Lucifer is something that Lucifer did not do. It's something that Lucifer did not say, and something that the good angel said. So, as you said, it was stuck in the first moment, but he didn't acknowledge that actually he had been created. So it is something that he did not do, which is a very standard theme, seen as a privation. But here I think it plays a crucial role because sin is not so much an open rebellion as a kind of withdrawal, okay? A kind of unwillingness to participate and to play the role that we are called to play. The good angels did that. They just, stepped out and they said, I exist, and I exist because I was created by God, because I'm using my intelligence in the way it's supposed to be.
And immediately start moving.
And then all the movements started. Exactly. And then everything.
They begin their art just at that very moment. As if they finally understood what they had to do.
What they had, that was their role. Whereas Lucifer doesn't want. So it doesn't move. What does it create? Just disruption. Okay. That is again, that is a kind of almost natural consequence of this withdrawal. The fact that it doesn't want to pay attention to the fact that it's called to play some role in this big plan. So I think that's
back again to the participation, right?
Yeah.
With the collaboration.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is to getting there through what he does not say directly in Lucifer, but through the angels who remained faithful and started. I think it's a very, very good way of approaching this issue, and it's quite revealing. I think it's a great thing. Reading and it brings us to rethink deeply who we are and how why we've been created and what is our active role in that. So it's a wonderful premise. It's almost a closing moment in the long voyage that Beatrice and Dante have done through, intellectually speaking, through the heavens, so that they're really ready to enter the Empyrean and have more food for soul. So thank you, Giorgio, for this wonderful conversation and for the many insights that this has given, at least to me, and I hope also to those who have been listening. And so I say goodbye to everybody and thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Have a good day.